For Hindi videos, you can now subscribe to my personal channel Amit Chhangani. For over 13 years, Motoroids has been delivering in-depth videos covering every single detail about products minus any unnecessary nonsense or drama. You can promote quality content by subscribing to Motoroids, adding Motoroids in your searches and by sharing our content with your like-minded friends. हिंदी बोलने वाले मेरे प्यारे दोस्तों, हिंदी वीडियोस के लिए अब आप मुझे मेरे पर्सनल चैनल अमित छंगानी पे फॉलो कर सकते हैं. लिंक इन डिस्क्रिप्शन. तो चलिए मिलते हैं वहां. Hey guys, welcome to Motoroids. My name is Amit and this is the Thar 1.5 liter diesel with two-wheel drive, and I think Mahindra have answered the prayers of a lot of people who wanted the Thar for its looks, decent performance, but not necessarily its 4x4 capabilities. It's a nice looking car. It has a very outdoorsy, very SUV-ish look. But going forward, this car will be adopted by a lot more people owing to the lower prices, and it is not attributed only to the engine capacity. I'll tell you why the prices, the differential would be higher than you expect, because the definition of an SUV has been very recently changed and this car is going to benefit from it. But let's talk about the most important thing that you are here to know about, and that's the engine. Now this 1.5 liter diesel engine, yes, you heard it right, the 2.2 liter M-Hawk diesel has been removed. For the two-wheel drive version, it's a rear-wheel drive car. The power is sent to the rear wheels, and the diesel engine here is based on the one that we have seen on the Marazzo, and the block is also the same as the one that we have seen on the XUV 300. Now specifically, we don't really know which engine is it, but obviously it's the same block. So what Mahindra tells us is that the engine has been benchmarked against the XUV 300 diesel. This engine here produces a little more power than the XUV 300, but a little less than the Marazzo's 1.5 liter diesel, which essentially is the same engine with a little bit of tuning difference. And here the power is 118.5 PS, 117 HP, and the power is produced at 3500 RPM. So this is not the same as the XUV 300s, which is produced at a higher 3750 RPM. So in that sense, this is closer to the Marazzo's engine. The massive torque which the 1.5 liter Mahindra engine has always been known for, of 300 Newton meters, comes at 1750 RPM all the way to 2500 RPM. But the good thing here is that 55% of this torque, which is almost 160 Newton meters, is available from 1000 RPM. All of those numbers along with the rear wheel drive should translate into a very quick 0 to 100 time, right? Well, such is not the case, because the weight here is significantly more than the XUV 300's, about 1.4 ton. Although Mahindra have not told us the exact weight savings on this car, but a ballpark would be about 60 to 70 kgs. And going by that number, if we reduce that number from the 750 kgs or thereabouts of the 4x4 Mahindra, I think the curb weight of this car would be around 1680 kgs or something, which would still be about 250 to 300 kgs more than the Mahindra XUV 300. And in that sense, when I tested this car, it gave me a 0 to 100 time of a little over 15 seconds, about 15.5 seconds, and that's about a little more than 2 seconds more than the Mahindra XUV 300. Now the XUV 300 definitely feels brisker than this, and of course a lot of changes have been made apart from the engine weight itself. So the engine's character is a little different. The 2.2 liter M-Hawk engine has a lot more torque available lower down the rev range. It's a proper four-wheel drive vehicle, so there's tons and tons of torque. So in that sense, there is a difference. If you're driving the 2.2 liter engine, you can definitely feel more torque lower down the rev range. Here also it's pretty tractable, but here the torque is not available by the truckloads like it is on the bigger 2.2 liter M-Hawk engine. On this engine you'll get only this 6-speed manual transmission, and the shifts here, as you can see, are medium throw. They are not short throw, and the shifts are reasonably smooth. They are pretty slick. There is a very minor notchiness. It's not buttery smooth, but it's not complaint worthy either. The clutch is a big difference here. The clutch is lighter, and there is some difference in the steering also. It feels slightly lighter to me. So as compared to the 2.2 liter bigger Mahindra Thar, you will feel that To use the manual on this vehicle is slightly easier. The clutch action is lighter, and generally this car is easier, slightly easier to drive in the manual format. But the difference is not all that much. Also, in terms of tractability, this is a pretty tractable engine, and even in the 6th gear this car will pull from as low as 40 kilometers per hour, in the 5th gear from as low as 35 kilometers per hour, in the 4th gear from as low as 30 kilometers per hour. So the 4th, 5th and 6th gears are relatively taller, and if you go down to the 3rd gear you will be able to pull from really low 20 kilometers per hour. So the tractability on this car is pretty good. Now, as I mentioned about the gear speeds, the first 3 gears are closely spaced, and the first gear will take you to 40 kilometers per hour, the second gear to 60 kilometers per hour, and the third gear will take you barely at around 100 kilometers per hour, and the next 3 gears are further apart and they'll take you to higher speeds. Now, the other thing that you would be interested in knowing is the suspension. Since the engine is lighter and the 4x4 gear has gone missing, so you'd probably think that the suspension has also been tinkered around. It has been tuned, but I don't see much of a difference. This car is still meant to be driven at a leisurely pace. This is not like the XUV300 which rides plush and really takes whatever you throw at it with aplomb. This car is still quite jittery. The ride quality, just like the bigger 2.2 liter M-Hawk engine, is quite bouncy, and not just over really bad surfaces, even on relatively smooth surfaces. If there are undulations, if there are minor imperfections, you can feel that in the cabin. There is a reasonably good amount of vertical movement in the car, and especially if you're sitting in the back seat, you would bounce around a little bit. So even now this car is not very comfortable, so that's something that you really have to keep in mind. The steering also is not as connected as the XUV300, feels rather inert. It's reasonably light at low speeds, although this is not feather light, but I don't think it's going to cause any inconvenience to any of you. Even the ones amongst you who are not very heavily built will not find maneuvering this car around too difficult. And generally, when I drove it around in town, I found it pretty convenient. There was no problem at all. There is a little bit of lunge forward that you feel when you're shifting the gears, but that can be modulated thanks to the light clutch. You also get an additional start-stop button on the right, which is not available on the standard 2.2 liter M-Hawk engine with 4x4. So that's a new addition, and as you can see here, you don't have the 4x4 selector lever, so that part has been replaced with this cubby hole, which liberates additional room for you. Apart from that, the entire cabin is the same. You get the same touchscreen, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. In terms of 4x4 gear, you don't have it, but you have a brake locking differential. So the power is sent to the rear wheels, and of course, if you want to slide it around, it's going to be great fun. And it comes with brake locking differential at the rear, of course. So if the car gets stuck somewhere, the car is always going to sense the slippage through its traction control function, and if there is slippage, it's going to hold that brake only at the rear and supply the power to the wheel that has traction. So in some sense, you will get a little bit of capability to get out of tricky situations, but this is not even remotely comparable in terms of its off-road capability to its 4x4 version. Overall, I think this car is really going to appeal to a lot of people who wanted the Thar for its look, this being a blank canvas for those who want to modify it, its macho looks. And not everybody, let's be honest about it, not everybody wants to take the Thar out off-roading and getting it soiled and dirty and all muddy. And for those who wanted it for its macho looks and for the way it feels, to be driving it at a leisurely pace, I think they're going to simply love the fact that it's available at a much lower price. Also, the fact that this car now will offer you better fuel efficiency in all probability, because on the XUV300 the ARI number is about 20 kmpl, and I'm assuming, although the ARI number has not been shared with us, but my testing suggests that within the city you'd be able to get 13-14 kmpl easy without any problem, and on the highway, if you're driving with a really light right foot, you can easily exceed 18-19 kmpl up to 20 kmpl if you're not hustling the car around. And hustling this car is not advisable, because this is not the kind of car that really likes to be thrown around corners. It's not a sporty drive. It's got a ground clearance of about 226 mm, so it sits quite high up. and it has got a significant amount of body roll. The steering is not very connected. The XUV 300 does a much better job of being thrown around corners. This car, on the other hand, likes to be driven in a gingerly fashion at a leisurely pace, in a straight line, or if you're going around corners, you have to be careful. So it's a totally different character. Also, from a comfort perspective, I would like to say unequivocally that this is not the most comfortable of the suspensions, although it has been tuned a little bit for the lesser weight, but still it's quite bouncy. So guys, that's that. It's still very tractable, very powerful for the kind of car that it is. It's not overtly slow. It feels pretty brisk, and you will have your advantages in the form of the fact that you'll get a rear wheel drive car that's really fun to slide around on off-road surfaces, on gravel, etc. It's reasonably brisk, as I mentioned. The fuel efficiency is better. There are two new colors, and you'd pay significantly less amount of money. So for those of you who were looking for the Thar as an option but were a little perturbed by its high price, this car can be the choice for you. As you would always expect from Mahindra, the engine is super refined, super smooth, no vibrations whatsoever, and Mahindra of late has been creating some really amazing engines, and this engine, D117 as it's called for its bhp output, is really smooth and is an improvement over the Marazzo's block that we have had earlier. So it's a nice creamy smooth engine, no problems there. And for being a soft top, it's not exactly a soft top but a semi hard top. The insulation also is pretty good. Now another important thing that you would do well to know is that the diesel is available only with this manual transmission, and the petrol, which is the 2-liter turbo petrol M Stallion engine, is available only with automatic. So there you don't have the option of getting a manual anymore, and the power and torque figures there are exactly the same as the 4x4 Thar. So no changes have been made there, but you will not get a manual transmission on the petrol. Now, as I mentioned before, this SUV will be significantly less expensive than its 2.2-liter diesel counterpart, and there's a reason for it. Not just the diesel, the petrol also is significantly expensive. There is no 4x4 gear, so that money has been saved. The engine is smaller, so that money is saved. And apart from that, it will get the sub 4 meter duty cut as well. But apart from that, very recently the GST Council has changed the definition of an SUV, and while all the sub 4 meter SUVs also fell under the definition of SUV, which attracted a high GST rate of 28% and a high cess of 22%. What has happened now is that the definition of the SUV has changed, and only if these three conditions are met will a car be called an SUV. So a car needs to have an engine which is bigger than 1.5 liters. So the engine has to be 1.5 liters or more. The ground clearance has to be more than 170 mm, and the length of the car has to be more than 4 meters. And as you know, the engine on this car is now less than 1.5 liters, and the length is also less than 4 meters. So this car will no longer fall under the SUV category, and that would reduce the GST and cess significantly, and that benefit we hope will be passed to the customers, and that would widen the gap between the prices of the 2.2 liter diesel and the 2 liter turbo petrol and this engine right here significantly. So those of you who wanted the Thar primarily because of its looks, and the performance of this diesel is pretty good, it's no slouch, so that won't be a problem at all. And this comes with a BLD for the rear axle, so it can take you out of some conditions, but not exactly. However, if you wanted to buy a car primarily for the looks of it, if you like the looks of the Thar, then you would be able to save a lot of money over the 4x4 version. Now you get a total of 6 colors on this car, of which 2 are new. So the old colors are Napoli Black, Aquamarine, Red Rage, Galaxy Grey, and the new colors are Blazing Bronze and Everest White. Now from the outside there are absolutely no changes on this car, and as you can see, this car is exactly the same as the 4x4 version, and at the rear you won't see any 4x4 badging, so that's the only differentiator. Even if the prices are not announced yet, we are hoping that the prices for this car will start from 10 lakh rupees. I tried to keep this review limited to the mechanical changes that have been made to this car, the engine and how it feels and how it drives. And in that sense, I hope that I was able to answer the questions that you had in your mind. Still, if you have any questions, put them down in the comment section. I'll be very happy to answer them personally. Thanks a lot for watching. This is Amit Changani signing off. If you like the video, hit the like button, subscribe to more Droids, and until next time, rev hard, rev free and drive safe.